experiment and you need to redo it. And so you're kind of bummed. You're like, well, how come? And so she tells you, well, it seems like, you didn't really control everything. So for an experiment, you have to control things. So, for instance, let's say maybe you put some of your closest friends in one group, and those tended to be the people that live near you. And so the fact that they're all from the same region might kind of skew your results. You have to control for other factors as well. Maybe in one group there are more guys than girls, and that has something to do with it. Or maybe it could be something like, let's see, I don't know, maybe diet. They didn't have the same diets. Yeah, those people were eating oranges, but those weren't. But there's a lot to it. So there are a lot of factors. And so we are going to watch a video about kind of just how experiments should be. And then, actually, I forgot to show you a video that helps you memorize the scientific method. So we're going to do that really quick, and then I'll show you the other video. I have a lot of videos, but okay. It's like Julie.
Oh my God.
You know the song?
What?
Wow, you should just stop using it.
Make a prediction, do a test, or experimentation. Analyze data and draw a conclusion. Make an observation. Form a hypothesis and make a prediction, do a test, or experimentation. Analyze data and draw a conclusion.
Okay, and it just goes through that like 50 million times, as I'm sure Ellen knows. And so, sorry, I forgot to show you that earlier. Okay.
To conduct a randomized control.
Sorry, this video is kind of boring, but it's a really good video.
Trial. A statistician will select a sample size large enough to produce a significant result. Care must be taken that the test subjects are properly representative of the target population and not tainted by selection biases that might skew the results. The subjects are blinded, knowing as little as possible about what's being tested. They are randomly and blindly assigned to one of several groups. There may be a group that will receive the treatment being studied, a group receiving an established treatment, and always at least one control group receiving a control or placebo treatment. Test administrators are also blinded. This is called double blinding, such that they don't know what group each subject is assigned to, and whenever possible, they also don't know what the treatment is that they are administering. Everything is coded to avoid experimenter bias and to cancel out any effects like patients trying to respond the way they feel the experimenters want them to. The trial lasts long enough to satisfy the statisticians and the scientists. Finally, when the results are tabulated by a blinded statistician, this is called triple blinding, we get the results. The cloaks of anonymity are whisked aside, and we finally learn for statistical certainty which treatments are effective and which are not. When this process shows significant benefits for a new treatment, and the trial can be repeated by other experimenters and yields similar results, then, only then, do scientists say that this is a product that works and is supported by evidence.
Okay. So, from that video, we can kind of learn a few things that we can do to fix our experiment, right? So the experiment didn't have very many, didn't have controls or whatever. And so you want to control for things. And so now to fix your experiment, you decide that you are going to split up your friends again from, hey Zana, can you tap it so we can
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so here you have 50 friends and you have 50 friends over here. But you decide that, maybe you want to get rid of the variable that they're different genders and so, or sexes. So you decide to go to middle school and you get 100 14-year-old girls. And so you feel like that'll help control one factor. And so you have half of them over here and half of them over there. And you decide to do a double-blind experiment. And so you have, and then you decide that they need to have the same diet so you can control for another factor. And so they're all going to have the same exact diet, the same amounts of everything. And you decide that you're going to have them eat those 4 oranges at particular times in the day, these over here. And in order to make a double-blind experiment, they won't really know what's going on, so they won't react in a certain whatever way they think you want them to, and you'll have someone else doing it. Okay, so let's see. Okay. So Zana, how do you think we can make it or end an assignment?
By drawing from a hat.
You could do that, yeah. That's a good idea. Okay. Okay. Now, we are going to talk about independent and dependent variables. So, okay. Independent. Does anyone know what an independent variable is?
One that changes.
Okay. So it changes. And then, does anyone know what a dependent variable is?
It changes as other things change.
Okay.
Like, it depends on other factors.
Yeah. So we could say it's our result. So in our little orange disease scenario, what do you think the independent variable would be?
That changes is whether you give the person an orange or not.
Yeah, exactly. So whether we give them the orange or not. And then, does anyone know what the dependent variable is? Okay, I'll tell you. So the dependent variable would be the percentage of people that have the disease. So that's something you'd be looking at. And you'd want to control for as many things as possible. So with medical studies, a lot of times for experiments, the reason that they do double-blind experiments, for ours it doesn't really work. You either get the disease or you don't. But sometimes, let's say that they're trying to see whether a certain drug helps kids with ADHD. And so let's say that they don't do a double-blind experiment. And so maybe the kids, the ones that know that they're getting the real drug, they tend to act a little calmer because they're acting the way that the researcher wants them to act. And maybe as you observe them, you tend to say that they're a little calmer than they really are because you want it to work. And so that wouldn't be good. So you have to do a double-blind experiment. So what you would do when you do a double-blind experiment is that you would want to use a placebo and you would want to use the real thing. And you would want to make it so that the kids that you're giving it to don't know that you're giving it to them. They don't know if they have the real drug or the fake one that's the placebo. And you would also want to make sure that those that are observing don't know, because you don't want that to skew their observations or whatever. So I have a video. Oh, and now we're going to get into statistics, because they help you when you're, coming up with your results. Obviously, when you do your experiment, you're going to have data, and so you have to be able to analyze it. And so I have a video here. Wait. Oh, sorry.
You've probably seen presidential polls that predict election results from about 1,000 surveys. Well, this is called random sampling, and here's how it works. Check it out. Somewhere in this poll you'll see 95% plus or minus 3%. 95% refers to the confidence level. Plus or minus 3% is what's known as the margin of error. These three important factors determine how many surveys you need: margin of error, confidence level, and customer population size. You see, sampling may sound and look complicated, when in fact, it's just a mathematical formula. And a 95% confidence level and 5% margin of error are typical goals for customer satisfaction research. So, what's a 95% confidence level? Well, if you repeated a survey 100 times with the same population, 95 times out of 100, you would get similar results. Not exactly the same, but pretty darn close. As for margin of error, let's say a survey shows 75% customer satisfaction. If your margin of error is plus or minus 5%, chances are 70 to 80% of your population is satisfied. But for most folks, random sampling results just don't seem logical. But here's how it works. At a certain point, you don't need more surveys, no matter how many customers you have. Random sampling lets you draw conclusions about all of your customers based on a few surveys. And that's why businesses survey in the first place.
Okay. Okay. So that just kind of helps know what sampling error is. And so this is actually not a good example. But anyway, so sometimes we tend to think that correlation is what causes things. Like, if there's a correlation like this, so the more oranges you consume, more likely you are to get this disease. And so you tend to think that sometimes we kind of draw conclusions. And so, but we actually can't do that, and there's a reason. So, in my textbook, it talks about colds. And so colds. So, someone may say that they think that lack of vitamin C, sorry about my handwriting, causes the cold. But maybe it's, I don't know, lack of sleep. Maybe they had the flu the other day, or a few days ago. Maybe they have a really poor diet. And so as you can see, it's kind of hard to just draw a conclusion. You can't just say, well, this is what causes colds, because there are all these other things over here that cause it as well. So, like our orange experiment, maybe your friend tells you, well, oranges have a lot of vitamin C, and they have citric acid, and they have this and that. And so it could be that maybe vitamin C is causing it, or maybe it's citrus, or it could be a lot of things in the orange. It might not just be oranges. And so, so you can't just say that that's what's causing it. So, sorry about all the videos, but we're going to watch a video about correlation and how it does not imply causation.
The famous author Mark Twain once said, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." Today's media throws us a whirlwind of information. Given that we lead busy lives, it's easy to take what we read at face value. In general, major news networks hire responsible journalists. However, occasionally misleading articles will still be published. One of the most common mistakes that journalists can make, particularly in the sciences,